Welcome to our meeting number 2, where we're going to dig into some really interesting aspects to preparing for and studying for these tests. So we are getting started now. I see hello from Morocco, hello from Italy. Welcome, come on in. It's exciting to be with you all as always. So yes, we're going to wait just a couple of minutes to make sure everybody is able to get in here and get situated. India, very good. Good morning. Actually, be good afternoon and good evening, respectively, here. Yes, this is great. Hi, Dixit. Welcome. Come on in. It's nice for me personally to be feeling a little bit better. Last meeting we had, I checked my temperature afterwards, and I had a good degree of a fever. So, it's I guess it always goes to show you don't appreciate health until you lose it. And while having the flu was hardly losing health, it does give you a little bit of appreciation for, sadly, those that are going through very difficult times. So, Olga, welcome, Netherlands. I love the Netherlands myself, having been there twice. Not almost anywhere else internationally, but something special about the Netherlands. So I do enjoy that country very much. So yes, welcome. Come on in. Looks like people are showing up. This is outstanding. So feel free to introduce yourself, say your name, where you're from. Egypt. Wow, this is great. We are being kind of that zone right there. Have a lot of people showing up. We got Egypt and Italy and Morocco and Netherlands, kind of that north-south corridor there. So that is great. Welcome and come on in. Hopefully you have a nice beverage. I realized I could have gotten myself a cup of coffee, which I forgot about doing. I was working on preparing for this meeting. So hopefully you guys will get better content, better material out of this, because I don't have a coffee with me, but I do have some water here. So it's almost empty actually anyway. So, all right, well, the goal of these is not to take too much time because I know your Saturday is valuable. I'm sure you have stuff that you're working on. You have stuff that you are around the house, whatever. You have stuff that you need to do. So Germany, welcome. Syria, wow, this is great. India, wow. Come on in, Stephanie, Asma, and Kamlesh. This is outstanding. So yeah, feel free to introduce yourself. Nitin, very good. So the focus of today is something that actually has stood out to me over these past couple weeks in my studies. And that is consistency. It's and this whole certification challenge has been great. I went into it knowing, hey, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this. For me personally, like how is this study really going to work? My study usually is in a different format. I'm usually studying and writing a study guide, not as many times reading the study guide. So it's been an outstanding experience for me personally, and I hope for you as well. But the one thing that has stood out to me thus far in my studies is this area of consistency. And particularly one key element that I've actually struggled with. And so we're going to dig in and talk about this. I want to do a quick review, though, of last week or last time we talked 2 weeks ago. And in particular, I want to talk about what test is for me. So I know, and I was actually very pleased. It sounded like a number of you switched from the professional developer to the associate developer test in your preparations, in your studies. And I think that's really good. That made me happy, just because I feel like you're going to be much more successful with this. Hey, welcome. Come on in, Jay, excuse me. So I feel like you're going to be much more successful with the associate developer as opposed to trying to go for the professional developer. The professional developer is really tough. And again, I would put that, I guess, in the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the hardest Magento test. I would probably put the professional developer as the hardest Magento test. So I don't want you to have to go through the pain of having to fail a test when the associate developer might be within your reach right now here, and it's available. So hopefully you're starting off with the associate developer if you don't already have a test under your belt, a Magento certification under your belt. If you do have a Magento certification under your belt, then yeah, go for the professional, go for something else. I believe cloud would be probably also fairly easy to achieve as well. Come on in, Pan Kaj. That's great that you're here as well. So again, just wanting to reiterate, if you have not taken a Magento test thus far, please do the associate developer. You're going to be much happier with that. So I'm not going to talk about that too much more. We got Rimini. So I don't know actually where that would be in the world. So Ruggero, maybe you want to enlighten me where Rimini is. I'm sure it's a wonderful place to live. India and Italy. Pujan, come on, welcome. This is great. So, yeah. So what test is for me? Hopefully, we're starting with the associate developer, and then we can graduate. We can move on past that. So here is the secret that I'm not perfect in this, but it's something I'm working on because it's been a struggle for me. I get down to my desk, and particularly Monday was like the highlight of this experience. I get down to my desk, and well, before I get down to my desk, so I work from home. This is my home here. I got down to my desk, and there was like 3 critical issues from our clients, and I'm like, what am I going to do about this? I got these critical, urgent issues I have to get done, but I also have to get my study done too. And actually, to be really frank with you, well, this Monday, I did not study, and I don't think so. I did not put anything into the today I studied. So I'm going to be studying here. Once we're done with this meeting, I'm going to go ahead and get my JavaScript study. Well, actually, I have something I have to do with. Then I can study. I'm going to get my JavaScript study done today. So remember, our commitment to each other was 4 days, at least 15 minutes a day. I hope you should be able to at least do that. Ideally 30 minutes if you're under a tight deadline. For example, if you're getting ready to study for Meet Magento India, you take a test there, you really have to be studying hard. So maybe might be an hour or 2 a day. That's a lot of time, especially for those of us that, which one of us has plenty of time on our hands? We just don't. So my thing is that here's the challenge I am doing for myself. Don't check email before I study. I'm not going to check email before I study. And I think that's probably actually going to have more of a life benefit to me than just getting my study in, or at least not being distracted while I study. Because it's one thing to get 15 minutes of study, and it's another thing to have 15 quality minutes. And I want 15 quality minutes. So could I challenge each one of you today that's joining in to focus on, to ensure that your study time is quality. And we do that by not having distractions. So whether it's our phone, we make sure our phone is turned off, whether it's checking email, whatever it is, we want to make sure that we aren't distracted while we study. This is the challenge for me, and I hope that you all accept that challenge as well. Hey, we're all going through this challenge together. Wow, come on. Rimini is a seaside city in Italy. That sounds nice. It actually, I checked the temperature in Celsius today. Right now, it's like -4. So over the weekend, it's supposed to drop a lot more than that. So place by the seaside sounds very pleasant at this time of the year here in Kansas. Yes, asthma. She, I'm not sure, but basically, he said it's wearing you out to try to study, to juggle your work. Yeah, it is. And that's the challenge I'm having. So this is real life advice. This is real challenge that I'm experiencing myself. So hopefully this is valuable to you. Deek said, am I coming to Meet Magento India? I would love to, but no, I'm not. My wife actually is expecting and supposed to be having a baby any day now. So I really shouldn't be leaving, let alone internationally, here for at least couple months. Welcome. Come on in. Yes. All right. Brazil. Yes. Northeast Brazil. Sounds even better. Okay. Well, it's warmer weather at this time of the year sounds wonderful, just to be really frank. You see, I'm wearing, 18 Celsius. Now, I'm not very sharp at the comparison of Fahrenheit to Celsius, but I will say 18 Celsius sounds a lot warmer than -4 Celsius. So whatever. You see, I'm wearing this vest here. It's just cold here, just cold. So with that, I would like to jump into kind of a practical illustration as far as how do I study? And I think this is a challenging question for all of us. And I want to share my thoughts, my experience as far as how I study. So, and I'm actually going to do some studying here live with you all. Hopefully, I'll try to make this practical so it's not like we spend the next 15 minutes me studying on the JavaScript developer test and you're like, well, I'm not even studying for the JavaScript developer. Why are we doing this? So just bear with me a little bit. But so a couple of things here now. And I was thinking about how can I nail this down for you all? How can I make this really practical? So the first thing I would suggest is, well, thank you all. We're excited and looking forward to be able to meet this little boy here in a few days. So hopefully in a few days, hopefully it won't be too much longer than that. But all right, so we want to read a section of the study guide. Whatever study guide it is that you're using, whether it's one of ours, whether it's the Magento U study guide, and I mentioned a couple in the last class that we did, last meeting, a couple of study guides that you can use. So we want to read a section of this, okay? What are we preparing for? Because remember, the study guide drives what questions are on the test. So before a test is written, basically the Magento U study guide is in Excel format and bullet points. And when we go to write the test, basically we write questions against those bullet points in the Magento U study guide. So the study guide is really helpful, really practical for being able to read or to understand what we need to study. Another from India. Very good. All right. Excellent. All right. So we need to read a section of the study guide. For example, I just posted in the Today I Studied. So here is, I've been working through 2.2 of our JavaScript study guide. So, and I'm actually going to work through today about the required JS config, how to create JavaScript customizations. And so I read this section, say, okay, does this make sense? Maybe it doesn't make sense. Okay. So either way, I need to learn a little bit more about this. And so that brings us to point number 2. Point number 2 is, okay, how do I implement what I've read? How do I make this practical? How do I embed this into my mind? Welcome, Michelle. Come on in. All right. So, and I've broken it down into really 3 different, you might say, segments, thoughts in this. So what does this cover? What material do we just read about in the study guide? So for example, in this area, using require.js to create JavaScript customizations. Now, you'll notice this is not necessarily talking about, well, let's actually go back to our slides and we'll break this down. So does this cover core code? So something that's already in existence in the core. So how do I use this product? Or for example, like on the Professional Developer Plus certification, how do target rules work programmatically? So in this case, I'm going to open up the debugger. And just for the sake of example, let's see here. I think I have, so I had the demo. I just created in my website here, I just created like a sample module, sample controller, so I could trigger a page that I have complete control over. So let's actually, we'll do this. We'll load that up and yep, so we got this loaded up. So now I'm going to jump down into, let's see what it's going to look like to vendor, Magento, CMS. I'm just showing you the example, like how we would set a breakpoint. Index. All right, so again, I'm skipping through some knowledge that is required to even find how this works. If you don't know, like, for example, how to get to this page, what I would suggest at that point is, and let me make sure my debugger is on. Now it is. What I would suggest at that point is set a breakpoint in, pub/index.php. So set a breakpoint here. If you don't even know how pub/index.php works or where that is found, you can't see this on my screen here, but there is, I don't think you can. You're right. Fortunate. There is a option in PHP Storm to break at first line in PHP scripts. And let me just enable that. We'll see if I have my debugger properly configured. That was, nope, I don't. So let me quickly, I forgot to check this. Tools, languages, PHP. Let's configure 7.3 interpreter here. Servers, I think, and debug. Oh, yeah, that's the problem. Debug port. I use a custom debug port for this. Now let's try refreshing this page. Once I click. No. So, okay. One other thing I'll try, and then I won't bore you with my troubleshooting. We don't want to ignore that. Okay. Servers. Let's just try adding one in here. lc.javascript.site. I hadn't configured this because JavaScript, you really don't need it. Okay. Yep, got that set. Now let's try again. Nope. Okay. So, unfortunate because I was hoping to. Yeah. Okay. Oh well. Lesson learned there. I'll try to make sure that debugger is working before the next time. So, anyways, set a breakpoint you can use to start at the initial run. Break at first line in PHP scripts. If you need help figuring out how to set a break, how to get going in this, like where is even the entry point for this application. So ultimately, like a study guide should help point you to that. Dev docs will also help point you to this answer. And so set the breakpoint and then just step through this line by line. That's how you're going to understand how this Magento core code works. So that would be this first one. Do research. Maybe the study guide might have some helpful information on this, or maybe a lot of information on this. Study guide should, like our study guides, have links out to where you can understand more. If you need to understand more, if this is something that you just know inside and out, then no need to spend extra time studying on this. But the debugger is really, really important. So use the debugger, get in there, and step line by line. It's going to take time. But as you're doing this, remember to write your own notes. Take just bullet points. What are the things that you feel like are especially important in this area that you're researching? Write those down. Try to get a picture, not only the individual small picture, but the big picture as far as how this works and how the system is supposed to work together. So, yes, that's a good thing to consider. If it's core code, dig in to your debugger and understand line by line how this stuff fits together. So that's the first one. The second one is new additions, and what I was just showing here in the JavaScript study guide, it talks about using require.js config to create a JavaScript customization. So we're not talking about core code as much, except for the fact that we can use core code to help us understand how this particular feature works. So, of course, there's a section, the study guide. Let's say I've read through this. So now I need to demonstrate my knowledge on this. And ultimately, it's one thing to read through this, but it's another thing. Let's actually dig in and do it. You might find there's some things that you maybe hadn't considered before, things that you need to work through to understand. So that's actually what we're going to do at this moment, and I hope it's going to be really helpful in this process of understanding how this stuff works. Mikola, if I hope that's how I pronounce your name. Professional exam is not as difficult as you're describing. Well, yes, well, that's, I'm glad. That's a great perspective. From my perspective, and it shows that you're a really good advanced developer, which is outstanding. From my perspective, I've seen so many people start out with that test and fail, like a huge number. it motivates me to help to suggest people start with the associate. But maybe as you're studying for the associate and you find, man, this is easy, why not just go get it and then work up to the professional? So yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest differentiator. If you do feel like you are more on a senior level, which I'm guessing, Mikola, you are, then feel free to go jump into the professional. Absolutely. So, but again, I really, 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 really hate to see people jump into the professional study and then go fail it because they just didn't have enough experience. All right. So let's look at this and see how we would work through implementing something like this. So we've read use required.js to create JavaScript customizations. Okay. So let's first think about what kind of customization can we do? Well, let's just look around here. Actually, let's clear this out. One thing I thought, well, let's look through our list of JavaScript files here in Chrome Developer Tools. And based off of what we saw here, it says to create JavaScript customizations. The first step in this, or the first section of this, is override or replace a core JavaScript module. All right, so how do we override a core JavaScript module? Well, we see that happens in this required.js config file. All right, so we see an example right here. So that's overriding Google Analytics. In fact, let's just go do that. We could even copy this in to our required.js config file. Now, the question is, where do these required.js config files reside? All right, so here is a trick I want to show you. Let's hit Shift twice. I'll make sure that you can see this window here. Let's hit Shift twice, the Shift key twice. We're going to type in required.js-config. All right, so we see a couple that pop up here. If we want to see more, we can click Include in Non-Project Files. So we see the path that we can work through here. So we see it's in vendor, Amazon Pay module, which, by the way, would line up to here. So the app code SwiftOtter demo would be the same as vendor Magento theme front end, or Amazon Pay module view front end. Oh, okay. So required.js should sit in view front end. So let's create a new file. Okay. Let's copy this in. Well, we know that SwiftOtter theme is not accurate for this case. We need to do SwiftOtter demo. All right. So yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, we just copied in this required.js update. So let's see if that works. So let's come over to our demo. We'll refresh the page. And let's type in required.js config. Because if you remember, what we talked about is this required.js config is actually compiled together. So it takes the required.js config files that are in every single module in Magento, and it compiles it, pulls it together, and creates one required.js config file that is then passed into required.js. And I'm not trying to get into the technical details too much, but just again, to show you how this works, we can troubleshoot this. All right, so let's look for SwiftOtter. It popped up right there. That's nice. That's really cool. So maybe if it didn't, we could consider going and deleting this file and trying to regenerate it. All right, so we'll probably see, though, that actually, I don't know if Google Analytics is even loading in here. Nope, it's not. So we need to change this up a little bit. Let's find another JavaScript file that we can override here. So we're just going to search for all JavaScript files, and let's see here. I'd kind of run through this as make sure I was not going to waste time here. And let's just look for the compare products. So compare products seems to power this part of the sidebar. So let's override this. So I see in the headers, the request URL is Magento catalog JS view compare products. So we're going to copy this end part in. I see based off this example that there's no .js in here. So then let's see here, we see SwiftOtter demo JS Google Analytics. So the point here is I've obviously kind of worked through this section. So I'm kind of and I've have enough experience in Magento. I've kind of skipping around a little bit, but you're going to see that as you go through this process, you might find you start banging your head against something. It just doesn't make sense. What's going on? In fact, I just had one of those experiences recently. You just don't understand what's going on. And that is where the real learning comes in, my friends. That is what is so critical in this process. I'm just kind of going through demonstration. But as you get in and you do it yourself, it's going to be incredible. Absolutely incredible. So let's create a compare products.js. Oops. Okay. Let's change this out. So compare products. We see that, again, .js file extension is missing. Okay, so what we could then do is, let's write a quick define, and then function. We'll just kind of throw together a file here. I think we can copy. Let's say, hey, maybe we want to extend this file. We want to make some modifications to extend it. So let's just drop this in here. We'll call this original. And then we'll do return original.extend. And let's look at, we have initialize. So we'll copy the initialize function in, and we have this dot super, which calls the parent method. So we'll do alert test. All right, so we have this is configured hopefully properly. We have mapped that over to here. Let's see what happens. Can you see down here? Yes, we have an error. So look at all these errors right here. So let's search for compare products. I see it right here. Ooh, this is really interesting. And I actually ran into this very problem here recently. It's a dumb problem, but it goes to show the learning that can happen. So I noticed here's what's happening. We have a circular loop. Maximum call stack size exceeded. We have all these files in here that can't be run. You see what's happening is it's trying to load this file, but in our required JS, we've mapped it around. So it's trying to load the Swift Auto demo, but then it's also trying to load Magento catalog. It just doesn't work. So what would be the solution? Let's go find, let's just come into Magento catalog, view compare products. Let's copy this out. And so we're basically replacing this entire file. And then let's add our alert test right here. Wow, it worked. Awesome. That's so cool. So a couple of things here I want to point out. First, make sure if you're a developer, you have your sample website that you set up here. Make sure, it's so important that you are in developer mode. Otherwise, you are going to pull out your hair when stuff doesn't update. So make sure you're in developer mode. Very important. And then, feel free to delete stuff, delete files, especially in the pub static folder. Don't delete htaccess if you're running Apache on your local machine. But otherwise, feel free to delete files. And of course, we have the Magento dev source theme deploy. That is also a very helpful method as well. So again, really brief, but I wanted to just walk you through the little challenge I had when I was working on this. And it was a dumb little thing because of course that makes sense that we don't want to have a circular loop in loading in this or overriding, replacing a JavaScript module. So that was really helpful for me. And I hope it's helpful for you in this process as you are working through step-by-step, line by line of whatever study guide you're using. One other thing to mention here, one other thing I wanted to mention, here we go, is, and actually that slipped my mind, so I guess I did not want to mention it. Yes, exactly. Circular dependencies, that's not good. So thank you for mentioning that. So, oh, that's right. That's what I wanted to mention is the project guide that I have. And let me pull in, let's see here, swiftauto.com. And I keep meaning I have not had time to get this published, but this, let me make it so you can see the URL too. This study guide, or actually project guide. So I have a study guide and a project guide. The project guide is completely 100% free, and it's actually it walks you through step by step and again, line by line of how to create a module. You see, there's 7 steps. I'm actually working through creating video, like a tutorial for this. Goes through basically requirements like like an architect would pull together, and then here's what you need to output, and then it goes through step by step. How do we create this? And of course, there is a GitLab repository that you can clone. You can work through this again line by line. So my goal is to make, especially preparing for the associate developer test, as easy as possible. And again, this is free, 100% free. So you don't have to pay anything for it. So just work through this. And I couldn't think of a better way to do that. How do you disable all the caching there? So Asma, great question. So in developer mode, these are symlinked. The required JS, I'm actually not 100% sure how that refreshes because it's not symlinked. I think it might check and recompile possibly. But in developer mode, and I can show you here, the pub static of Magento Luma file is, you'll see, it's kind of hard to see here, but there's a little plus or a little arrow icon, and that means, actually you can see right there where it's symlinked to. So right there, it means everything is is automatically always updated. You do not want to run it in production like that. Let's just put it that way. And that's why the production mode for Magento does not symlink. All right. Very good. So that covers point number 2. Let's look at point number 3. All right. So, and this is primarily for those of you who are studying for the solution specialist. Again, the solution specialist, just to set your expectations, is a very, very difficult test. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be tough to pass. So, for example, like here's our study guide. But again, it's based off of the Magento use study guide. So if money is an issue, then the Magento use study guide, it's going to take longer to prepare for, but you know, it hopefully will allow you to help you to pass as well. So here we see information about this, and then we can get into the Magento admin panel and we can work through this. So my JavaScript environment here is open source. So I don't have the staging dashboard set up, but here we go. So you can just get in there. Hopefully if you're going for the solution specialist, you need to have commerce. It's really important, but get in there and make a demonstration. How does this work? I think one of these is how to preview as an admin. The biggest thing is, while asking questions is great, you know, you can ask questions of me or in our the certification Slack channel. Ask questions just generally there. What I think is far more important is that you demonstrate this. You get in there, you figure this out. How does this work? How can I make this work? What is the solution? What is the path to be able to do this? So that's what's really important. And I know that's kind of vague. It's kind of not overly concrete, but that's really what it does take, especially for the solution specialist, is get in there, demonstrate your knowledge, figure out how this stuff works line by line. Make sure you have exhausted each different area of the study guide, and that you really understand how this works. All right. So I think that's what I wanted to cover today, is again, how to study and working in an unfortunate that it does bug me that I actually had an issue yesterday morning with my debugger not working, and it looks like it's repeating itself. Let's see here. We'll break it first on. I'm going to try one quick thing here. 9001. Yep, force break. That's all correct. let's try turning off this, turning it back on, and ha! Look at that. Oh, that might have been why. Okay, so I'm going to quickly run through this. So I had the stop at first break or stop. It's under the run menu in PHP Storm. Break at first line in PHP scripts. That is really important if you need help. Like, how do I figure out where do I even start? So I'm going to uncheck that just to make our life a little easier. All right, so I had set a breakpoint in the controller index, and you can see that good. Controller index. So this is the controller. And here's the thing, like with the debugging, I can step in line by line through this. So understanding how we get these values from scope, from store config, scope config in the code, scope config interface. I'm going to step in. So line by line, I'm going to step over this. So we can see how this is resolving, how this is figuring out what scope is we should be looking at, is if it's the default scope. We're going to step through here. Now, this step into that. If looks like if it's cache, it's going to try to find that. Step in here, get with parts. We're going through this line by line to understand how this is even loading data from the database. Better yet, clear your cache and then run through this. Set a breakpoint through here. So let's keep going here. All right, so basically it already loaded it in. Result is home, and we are good to go. Let's catch up on some questions here. How do you disable all the caching? Thing here. So again, in this specific case, well, actually, let me show you here. Bin Magento cache status. Oops. So I actually only have full page cache disabled. Otherwise, all of my caches are on for what I showed you earlier. And so that's, again, that's because I am in developer mode. You can see, CNV. You can see I am in developer mode right here. So you can also change that in the command line as well. Have to clean cache in order for the new changes to take effect. All right, so okay, so it depends on what changes. So if it's just JavaScript, if it's files in the static directory, so also not less files. If it's just files in the static directory, JavaScript files in the static directory, and HTML files as well, developer mode will be symlink that. However, if this is layout, XML, or PHTML templates, you would need to disable layout and or actually for sure full page cache. You always want to have that almost always disabled if you're in development, if you're developing, as well as block HTML. So this layout here will disable layout XML caching. Full page, of course, disables everything full page. And then we have block HTML, which will disable caching of the PHTML templates. And another, yes, good point. This is great. See, that's why I love these discussions. So you'll notice here that I did have disable cache selected in Chrome Developer Tools. I wish I could zoom in on this just so you see. So we have in the Network tab, disable cache. If you find that changes are not being made and you are sure that you're in developer mode and you have deleted already the pub static directory, and the reason I say deleted the pub static directory is because if you were previously in, say, production mode on your computer and your development machine, and now you switch to developer mode, those files that have already been compiled and cached there, those will not automatically be deleted. Those symlinks will not be created. So that's why it's best just to blow away the pub static front end directory when you're in developer mode. But also make sure you have disable cache. So that could be another thing that would cause your files not to be updated. And one thing you can always do, if you're wondering, like in any environment, what I can do is you can right click on a file that's loaded in, open a new tab, and you can do a hard refresh on there. Okay, is this updating? Is this not? A hard refresh will help you understand whether this file was cached or not. All right, this is great. So I have a few minutes for question and answer. Is there anything I can help you, my friends, out with as yes, Mohammed, exactly. If you have deployed static, so let me just show you. If you've done, let's see here, uh, set up static content deploy. If you've done that in developer mode, or actually or default mode as well, you will get this error. So of course you can force it. And so if you're trying to troubleshoot an issue on production, you can force it. But otherwise, it doesn't allow you to do that. And that's where you want to do the dev source theme deploy. Okay, so what for less files to be seen in Chrome Inspector instead of process CSS files. Okay, that's going to come down to your grunt process, and grunt can create source maps. So when I am done, what I will actually do is I will post in the I think we have a front-end developer channel. Let me double check. I'm sure we do. I'll post in the front-end developer channel a package.json. So we use here internally, we use Yarn, and then as well as Grunt. So the default Magento Grunt process, but also Yarn. A file that I think will be very helpful in allowing you to make CSS changes and then have it auto update. So it can use live reload, and it'll automatically update your files using Grunt. So I will post that into the front end channel on Slack once we're done. So Bargiv Meta, very good question about the cloud. Okay, so I actually had feedback the other day saying that our study guide was enough to be able to pass the test. So your mileage may vary on that. I'll leave it up to you. But that was some feedback that I did get the other day. Preparing for that, ideally you do have a cloud sandbox environment. Unfortunately, those are not the easiest to get unless, well, they're easy to get if you're a community insider or a bona fide Magento partner, or work for one. So either way, it's easy to get there, or you are working for a merchant that has cloud. Otherwise, it's really difficult to get. So you could use, for example, again, our study guide. And I've heard of people passing that with no cloud experience. It just takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to work through, understand how this stuff goes, and a great imagination, I would say that. But you're going to be a lot easier to work through it if you do have an environment. Because ultimately, again, this comes back to practical experience. You're going to understand how to create Magento services, use the Magento services file, how to configure the Magento application YAML file, how that works with different environments, different Git branches. For example, how do you enable SendGrid, or not SendGrid? Is it SendGrid? I can't remember off the top of my head. In Magento Cloud. So that's what is really helpful and important there. I had a question. Which editor is easier for development? By Davidus. Good question. That I use PHP Storm, and I've actually hardly used. Well, I use Sublime for just text editing, and it's outstanding for working with massive files. You have a big SQL dump that you have to sort through, whatever, So it works really well for that. But I think it does have some integrations for PHP debugging. But to be frank, it's hard for me to see anything that competes with this. And I'm not sponsored for saying this or anything at all. But I actually used to use, was it NetBeans? And before PHP Storm came out, and that worked out. That was pretty good too. Though that NetBeans is free. PHP Storm, isn't it like $50 US a year, something like that? But this information is really helpful in just being able to step back through. So I have this place in the call stack, but I can step back through the call stack and I can see the variables at each frame in this call stack. And I'm sure you all are aware of this, but one of my favorite features is this evaluate. It's alternate F8. For the sake of easy example, you can evaluate any expression you want in here and see how does this work real time. Okay, so yes, and I just want to keep stressing this. Anytime you have a question, think through, is this question answered in the core code? Of course, you can look at Stack Exchange, you can ask the question, whatever. The core code, though, is I'm going to say probably one of your greatest keys to unlocking tremendous knowledge of how this system works. Don't be afraid. As you saw, I stepped into the core code here. Don't be afraid to step through this to understand how this works. Oh, excellent. Varga, if you have a cloud environment, great. I'm glad to hear this. Nitesh, are these sessions getting recorded? Yes. You will be able to watch this live stream as soon as it is done. So yeah, feel free to do that. I understand how time commitments work, and so I'm glad that YouTube allows these live streams to be recorded. Oh, Michelle already answered the question. Very good. Okay, so any other questions that I could maybe help answer, give my opinion at least on, and I've been really excited. This has been outstanding for me. You've seen I've shared some of my learning through this, and I'm really excited what I have learned through this, and I hope that as we all work together in tandem, and we're going to collectively gain a lot of knowledge. One thing I would like to again suggest for every one of you, we have in Slack a Today I Studied channel. There's a couple of us that are posting in there. If you've taken that commitment, so 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week, if you've taken that commitment, post in that channel. It's a great way to keep track of it and to, hey, this is what I studied. This is what I worked on. So I suggest that you take advantage of that Today I Studied channel in Slack, and feel free to post your findings there. Barath, I hope that's how you pronounce your name. So preparing for a JavaScript certification so I can be, oh, wow, recognized as a full stack developer. Way to go. That's it. Any tips? So, again, it's pretty much what we talked about here previously in just working through the study guide, and as much as you can demonstrate your knowledge, your understanding of how this works, but also creating modules, creating demonstrations, but also stepping through core code. One thing I would like to do here, I forgot to do this earlier. I want to show you something. Take advantage of this sources tab. We're going to disable the debugger here because I don't like that popping up anymore. Okay, so take advantage in Chrome Developer Tools of this sources. So we can browse to whatever source we want, whatever JavaScript file, compare products, and we can now set breakpoints here. So don't forget that is more than available and ready for your use. So again, we have, let me make it so that you can see my screen. So you can see here, our breakpoint has been triggered. We have a call stack. And this is what I fully intend on working through here eventually in the study guide. Look at this call stack. I got to step through this because I need to understand how this works. How does JavaScript get initialized on my Magento page? So you'll see that I kind of shortcut and I jump into this file that I already created. But you can step through this and understand how this works. And again, we can see all the variables that exist here in this process. All right. Okay, let's see here. Wow, we got some questions that were popping in. Great. Visual Studio Code provides almost as good Xdebug integration as PHP Storm. That's awesome. I have not actually used that, but I've heard great things about Visual Studio Code. It seems like, now they're good memories here. 1 second. But it seems like it was kind of the cool thing for tech companies to come out with text editors a few years ago. And I actually still use Adobe Brackets. But Visual Studio Code seemed like it was a clear winner out of that whole competition there. Is there any data scaling in Magento, like integrating NoSQL database to load product data? I think all of that is possible. It's just a matter of, it's an outstanding thing to dig into. I have not ever done that myself. I've just not had a need to do that. Bat said it'd be really helpful if you would share information about less compilation with live preview on a server. Yes, I'm going to say I will see about what I can do about that. And figure out maybe how we've pulled together a good environment for that, because I understand that can be kind of tricky, and so maybe we'll pull together a YouTube video on that or something like that. NetBeans, great memories. Yes. Yes, it is. Those were the good old days, but I just talked to somebody recently that's still using it. So, hey, it's still alive, round and kicking. That's great. Any major updates on the JavaScript study guide since last year? No, not that I'm aware of. Magento has kept the JavaScript certification at where it is. I think technically it's 2.2. And it really hasn't improved much, I think, because PWA is coming out in the next year or two, and they'll probably develop a certification for that, and it's kind of going to eclipse at least some amount of the JavaScript test. Let's see here. Another, yes, MJ Dreams. That's very true. There is some interesting aspects to Magento core code. And so, yes, but it is still the best resource because they've already done it. And most everything that we need to implement has already been done to one extent or another in the Magento core code. Ask about alternate sources of Magento core. Okay, I hadn't seen that. So yeah, there's a lot of modules out there. The problem is my challenge is consistency. How one identifies, especially if I don't know where you're at on the learning scale, but some of that's really hard to say. Is this quality code or is this not quality code? And for the most part, the Magento core is pretty much quality code. Okay. Let's see here. A couple other questions. How big of a difference between the professional developer and professional developer plus? So having taken both, I would suggest that the professional developer is actually a little bit more complex in deeper knowledge required than the professional developer plus, but the plus covers topics that most of us are not as familiar with. So if you're a partner and you are working with a lot of high-end commerce websites, you might be, for example, getting into target rules for products. But I've never modified those. I've used them. I've configured them. I've just never modified them. So in that way, so the actual knowledge level, I think, is not quite as deep, but it's covering a wider array of subjects, if you get what I'm meaning there. Mohammed, feel free to email me if you want to join the Slack channel, joseph@swiftotter.com. I'll be happy to get you in. So yeah, feel free. Anybody who wants access to the Slack channel, feel free to email me, joseph@swiftotter, and I will ensure that you have access. Any good, because I asked about, yes, MJ Dream. So feel free to post in the JavaScript channel, and I'll be able to do my best to help answer your question there about data scopes. Yeah. Great question, Nitesh. Any additional PHP Storm extension and plugin that is helpful during development? Yes, I would be happy to point you to a couple. Let's jump into plugins. All right. Magento PHP Storm. This is a really good module. I can't remember because I use both that and Magento too. I'm not exactly, I forget the delineation between the two. Magento, you have to pay a little bit every year. It's not much. Magento PHP Storm provides some, I think, context in the XML files. So you can command click or maybe control click on Windows, command click on in Mac. So you can jump to different source files. Magento is great. It has a lot of really powerful stuff. For example, I think it's enabled here. It should be. Yep. All right, so let's say I'm going to create a new, let's create a new view model. Model/test. One thing, and it's just little things that end up saving a lot of time. I type in namespace, Swift Otter. Is it not going to pull up for me? Okay, it didn't this time. Normally, yeah, it should come up, but I guess it's not. Normally, it'll autofill the namespace directory for me. So again, it's little things like that that I feel like save a lot of time, and probably one of my 60-second videos that I like to publish. I'll be probably highlighting Magento. All right, looks like I don't see any other questions coming in. So this has been outstanding. I am so grateful that you all have taken the time to join in. I'm looking forward to 2 weeks from today when we're going to again dig in and learn about how we can continue studying. And I'll give as many suggestions as I possibly can to put you on the right track and make sure that you are going to get this certification. That's gonna make me really happy. So, and then hopefully the T-shirt too. So, again, the top 2 winners, if top 2 scoring participants of every Magento certification are going to get a free T-shirt. So, at all expense to me. So, because I want to see you successful. So, anyways, very good to have you on. Looks like we are actually close to an hour now. So, thank you for joining. I wish you the very best of weeks. Study, study, study. Be consistent. Keep your email off. Keep Slack off. Whatever it takes. Be consistent in getting this study in and done. Thank you for joining in, and I look forward to seeing you here in a couple weeks.